Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's I Love Learning podcast. I'm Dr. Gina Anderson, CEO and co founder of Luma Brighter Learning. And this is my podcast where we talk to folks who inspire others and who have either overcome the impossible themselves or they help others overcome the impossible and thus have a mind of a champion. And today I have a champion. Today on my podcast is Nancy Sislow. I was just telling Nancy Sislow that I've probably known Nancy Sislow just as long as I've known Elizabeth on my team. Today is Elizabeth's 14-year Lumiversary working with me, and she also is a designer on Nancy Sislow's nursing program. And Nancy has a master's degree in nursing, and she's a clinical nurse specialist. And she worked with me to design one of the best in class nursing programs in the country, and Elizabeth also was part of that. So without further ado, I am so excited and I am so honored to have Nancy today on my podcast. Nancy, thank you for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself so people can learn about you and tell us all what you're passionate about?
Well, I'll give it my best shot. Thank you very much for having me. This is a great opportunity for me to learn and grow while I'm practicing helping you learn to grow. I'm a nurse that's been a nurse for many years. I'll just say I'm experienced and been there a long time. Since I've gotten my master's degree, I've expanded my practice and ultimately went into education. I did a lot of clinical and administrative work first and felt that I could contribute to nursing by continuing to help educate nurses and help them grow. And I was fortunate enough to stumble across the University of Illinois at Chicago's online learning program, which kind of matched two of my goals. One was to continue helping nursing. The other was to work with electronics and programs and programming and see what I could do online. I've just been fascinated by that. So I've been doing online education since about 2008. In
Wow.
various forms. I started off with one course that the university offered that was really a clinical experience for master's students, but I found that communicating with them through Blackboard and email worked much better than me trying to go face to face throughout the whole
Mm.
Chicagoland area. So I started there and continued then as the online classes began. So I did get to work with that first program we did that's so
Yeah.
stellar, and having Elizabeth be part of making learning interesting for the students and finding ways to engage them and get them going. And as we developed, I learned a lot too.
Mm.
I've always been a bit hesitant to stand in front of people and just speak words. I found that rather ho hum, but being able to find interesting ways to challenge people, to get them to gather information and then to share that information has been a kind of learning process that I've really enjoyed enhancing with students. So my passion, I guess you could say, is helping people learn, helping people grow. And it kind of matches my nursing because as my nursing career evolved, I realized teaching people about health was the area that I really liked the best about nursing. I wasn't necessarily technically good and have to admit maybe once or twice felt like fainting at the sight of blood. So, I'm one of those nurses that's a little different than people imagine. But being able to educate, to guide, to help has been just kind of the thing I've loved to do for the longest time. So that's kind of where my career started and where my passion is right now. I
I
have
love
wonderful
that.
students. You know what? I have actually found online learning to allow me to get to know people, even though maybe I've never truly seen them face to face.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with discussion boards and icebreakers and email and all. You can get a good feel for where people are coming from and what their challenges are, and if there's ways I can enhance their learning beyond providing the structure in the program to guide their learning. So
Yeah, I like
it's
that. So one of the things, Nancy, you mentioned, and I know this about you. So for those of you that don't know Nancy, Nancy was a little hesitant to come on my podcast. So the reason why, and Nancy said this in her response, is, she really wants to learn different technology and to continue to grow and learn so she can help others really grow and learn. And so for her to come on this podcast, thanks again, Nancy, for coming. I know it was a big step forward, but I'm really passionate about how Nancy helps move people forward when they've overcome a hurdle or roadblock. And I know, Nancy, you could probably share either a time in your own life that you had a hurdle or roadblock that stood in the way of your passion, or maybe one of your students. I know the last time we were on together, we talked about some of those situations too. But why don't you share if someone has a roadblock that's really, preventing them to move forward in their growth and in their love of learning or their passion? How do you handle that?
When I've uncovered that there's an issue, and sometimes you can see it in what appears to be a lack of interest in learning or someone who's struggling to understand, there's something usually in their way that's keeping them from being open to the new information. So I try to reach out and express that understanding of it is sometimes hard and things do get in the way. If you have too much
Mm,
going on in your head, it's hard to take in new information. I don't mind. I hope you don't mind if I digress, but one of the
no.
good opportunities that I had to help people move beyond hard points was when I had the opportunity to be a motorcycle safety instructor.
I love
Um,
that.
I had learned to ride a motorcycle, let's see, that had been about 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And taking that step was a hard one because it was kind of frightening for me, but I didn't want to ride on the back of that motorcycle anymore. That wasn't comfortable. So I took the class. I struggled with the class. I didn't pass the class, but I
Wow.
went on and practiced and kept working myself until I was licensed legally as a motorcycle rider. And then after about 20,000 miles of riding a motorcycle, I was able to become an instructor for the state of Illinois. They
Wow.
required some experience, and then you had to, pass the classes, and they taught that. So as a motorcycle safety instructor, I had the opportunity to work side by side with people, some who had never, ever even
Wow.
thrown a leg over a bike, didn't know what a clutch was, or how you use a throttle to make a motorcycle go. And you could see many of them uh, having a lot of anxiety. Some people hide that anxiety, but it was there. And, being able to gradually work with them, help them be confident, take a little extra time to spend with them, and then encourage them with the little successes they made was the way I felt like I could really encourage people beyond what they felt was impossible. And there were occasionally people who would say, this isn't for me. And I'm like, well, if it isn't for you, that's one thing. But if it's just because you don't feel like you've got it yet, don't stop
Oh.
going. Try some more, take some time. Let's work it out. Maybe we can find free moments.
Mhm.
And that often helps people if they really reflect back on, why is it that I want to stop? And is it truly because it's beyond me and I'm not interested? Or is it fear, anxiety, feeling incapable? And most of the time, we're not incapable. It's those other things that get in the way. And so if I can help people look at that. Working online with students, I find ours is an asynchronous program, but there are deadlines and due dates. And when my students start to fall behind on those due dates, I usually reach out to them to try to find out why. Most people don't take a class that they don't want to participate in. Something's in their way. And then I can offer them an opportunity to catch up, if you will. I'll allow them to be late with their deadlines, with some point deductions, but the more important thing is to learn, is to take
Mm.
the information and go and grow. It's not particularly the score you got on that one thing, it's the end result, which is gathering all that information. So I find that I feel like I've helped some students who've just, the stories they've told me are not fun things to happen in people's lives, but with some support, guidance, and a
Mm.
little grace, they've finished the course successfully enough that they can continue on with their education. And I think that's where we need to be understanding of people as they learn it. It's not all about did you get 10 out of 10? It's what clicked in your head, what made sense to you, and can you show us that you're adding that information to your bank of knowledge that helps guide you for the rest of your life. So
Mm.
that to me, those are the kind of circumstances where I try to help people get past what seems to be impossible, because it isn't really impossible.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's really trying to really understand or recognize that it's fear or there's something that's holding you back. So Nancy, if someone says to you then like I have this fear, I don't know how I'm going to move forward in this journey or in this class or maybe I'm too scared to get on the back of that's me get back on the back of the motorcycle. What advice would you offer, either from the perspective of the safety manager or as a nurse clinical professor? What would you recommend, or what
Mm,
guidance do you provide? Do you have any ideas like to help them move forward in their journey so that they can complete the class, so that they
right,
can get on the motorcycle when you know it's fear that's holding them back?
right. I find personally that I've advised some people, I don't know whether they like my advice or not, but if you can, in your mind, process to the worst point, what is the most god awful outcome that you can think of for this problem you're having? And then look back and see who along the way can help you. How can you manage those problems? Who's there? What can you
Mm,
do? What is it that's causing it? And can you use logic and
mm,
rationale to move beyond the emotion by virtue of having taken it to the worst outcome? Sometimes that helps get past that. Some people aren't comfortable with the logic. One of the big things we taught, if you notice the name of the course, was motorcycle safety course. It
mm,
wasn't just about getting on that machine and zooming around. It was about how can you be safe on that machine. And I had an interesting experience as I learned to ride myself and started telling the people I was working with. I was working in a hospital, and I would go visit the nurses I knew in the emergency room, and they go, "You can't ride a motorcycle, you're going to die." I'm like, "Oh dear, that's not good."
that's
And
yeah.
then I looked around the people I was riding motorcycles with, and some of them been riding for 30 years. I'm like, "What's the dichotomy going on here? What's happening?" And that's when I realized the nurses had the perspective of what they always saw, which was always the worst things. People came to the
Mm,
emergency room with problems. The other riders had learned to be safe. And
mm,
as I learned and studied about safety, I realized you can't be wild and cavalier on a motorcycle. You must be prepared for everybody to try to run you over all the time. And
mm,
by doing so, you heighten your alertness and you increase your safety. So I think it's taking those perspectives and helping people look at that. And then some people have just had too many bad experiences. They're not going to be able to overcome it. You know, if you
mm.
know people that didn't make it after a long motorcycle ride, well, maybe you just aren't ready to do that. And that's okay too. We don't all have to do everything.
Right.
We all have to be individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Having to come over that mindset, I mean, can be really challenging, but if you can and it makes sense, definitely going forward can change your life and
Mhm.
make you feel better. And what do you so I know you and I talk a lot about your passion of growing, and I know technology. I remember working with you and talking about online learning and discussion boards, and learning and growing. You have this sense inside of you, Nancy, that you're always wanting to grow and learn. And just coming on this podcast is an example of that. What helps you be happy? Is this the idea of growth, or what every day makes you happy to want to grow and continue to learn?
Well, I do think that is a component of what makes every day happy for me, that, by having continued to be an online instructor, I have that contact with people that's, I think, part of what fuels my passion too, that maybe I am helping people. I have, other activities in my life where I enjoy being with people, and so that fuels my day, but I'm always learning from those people. I'm always
Mm,
learning something new, and I'm finding I'm understanding a new perspective. I have to admit that I basically grew up in the Midwest. I mean, I was maybe spent a few years of my life in Tennessee, but most of the time north of the Mason-Dixon line in the Midwest. And recently, well, within 20 years, I retired to the South. Now, I
mm,
thought of the United States as one big place where all the same, everything's fine, until I really spent time listening. Do you know that
mm,
this almost of the people I've met in the South, and I'm in Mississippi, so that part of the South, put the emphasis on the second syllable of almost every word. Midwesterners put the emphasis on the first syllable of almost every word. So I would mispronounce the words that my friends were saying, and they would look at me like I was kind of crazy. But I've learned the emphasis they put. They're all the same things, but they put their emphasis in different places. And if I hadn't opened myself to
mm.
listening to them, to conversing with them, with accepting the fact that I'm different than they are, I would never have been able to learn all that I've learned. And to me, that's been the most exciting part of being in a different place and having to learn. Um, I think that's what we have to do. I think we and maybe that's what fuels my passion. Every day I'm learning something new. I love flowers and plants and outdoors and things like that. So I've spent a lot of time learning what are the native plants here. Right now, the azaleas are gorgeous,
Oh,
and
they
it's
are.
the
Mhm.
time of year. The azaleas up north used to say, please don't blow any cold air on me. And they're more like rhododendrons from Seattle, you know.
Absolutely.
But by being open and asking questions and looking and talking to people and listening to people, I think that's where that to me, that's the passion of the day. I
Oh,
just thoroughly enjoy that kind of thing where I have that chance. I've learned to play golf in the past 20
wow.
years, and I I have to approach things a little differently than some people in order to continue to make it fun. A lot of a lot of people wanna play golf to be good. They wanna be like the pros and hit the ball a million miles. I'm just excited that I'm outdoors, moving around with friends, and the ball moves forward. You change your perspective and you have a wonderful time. It's kinda what makes learning fun if you can really look at it in so many different ways.
Yeah, I enjoy that perspective, really looking at it from a different perspective. Maybe at one time in your life you did it a certain way and things have changed and adapting to that change to really help you move forward so that you're happy. Is there something that you can think of like in that process that really left an impact on your thinking? I mean, this is great advice. I mean, a lot of people struggle or they think they've lost their passion, but is there something that left really significant impact on your thinking to make you live each day in this way?
I actually would say one of the biggest things that has impacted me was a concept that was presented in the course I teach. I
Mm.
did not originally develop that course by myself. It was developed by Kate Treadway, wonderful woman,
Oh, hi,
brilliant,
Kate. We love
brilliant lady.
you.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
awesome. But we include in the course for these nurses, and they're registered nurses who are getting a bachelor's degree, the concept of critical thinking.
Mm.
And in the concept of critical thinking, we try to tell the students it's thinking about thinking. And you learn so much from all the things you do. And that has stuck with me. And the more I think about it, the more I try to encourage the students to look at it, to understand it. It really makes your world bigger, makes you better able to work with other people if you can think about how you think, erase some old habits, or at least move them aside where so there's room for the new to come in. And I
Hmm.
think that idea of thinking about thinking and allowing your brain to be open has been
Mm.
one of the most inspiring things for me, and would be I really try hard in the course I'm teaching now to get the students to understand that, open up, and realize what I'm doing in my course is actually trying to provide new ways of looking something they already knew about. So
Yeah, I
that
wrote that down, thinking
oh,
about thinking,
oh,
because
it's
this
awesome.
concept, yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many of us that are listening today or that are tuning in really think about your thinking. It's a really an amazing insight to have, and it really ties to this concept of authentic learning. I'm very passionate about authentic learning, critical thinking, thinking about thinking. What is and I know you and I have designed courses together. What does authentic learning look like to you? Does it involve critical thinking? Are there components, or does it mean something else?
No, I think it really is it involves that critical thinking. It involves being open to new ideas and adding them to your arsenal and comparing and contrasting,
Mm,
because otherwise you're just taking words in, spitting them back out. I think if it's authentic, it really becomes something that you digest. I recall when I finished my my master's nursing program, I came away almost feeling like I'd been socialized, that I
oh.
had been socialized in a certain way to think, because we were taught to think about the clinical nurse specialist role as being an educator, a caregiver, a researcher, and a leader. But as I started to practice, I brought in those things I had been taught and started looking at them and learned so much more from
Mm,
applying them. So it's not important to just memorize some words. You need to take them in and then use them on into your
mm.
future in order for them to really have meaning and to apply to your life. And to me, that's authentic learning. That's really learning. That's not just memorizing and be able to spit back little known facts of useless information, I call it. But
No, no. Nancy, you helped me with my doctoral research. So, absolutely, we talked about authentic learning. It's so important, that application of knowledge, so that you can bring it back from your long term memory and activate and process and behavior. Absolutely. What do you think? I know that we've talked about this kind of offline in a little bit, but a lot of times people are stuck. They're stuck at a place, whether it's through grief, whether it's through depression, whether it's from something hard they're going through. And then they feel like they can't move forward. If someone like came to you, and I'm sure you've had this as a nurse, and you have it with your students, but they come to you and they say they've lost their passion. And what advice would you provide to them?
I think one of the things that I've said on occasion that I think has an important impact on people's lives is don't try to be perfect.
Mm,
Allow yourself to be you. And right now, with all that's going on, you are not going to be perfect. So let it be just the best you can be now. And I think, to me, that's what can sometimes get you unstuck. Because if you're overwhelmed with so many things and then you add something new that you want to be so perfect at, get 100% on a paper or knit this thing exactly right or whatever. If you allow yourself to make those mistakes, maybe not have it be absolutely perfect, just this is the best I can do right now, you're still going to learn. You're still
mm,
going to be better than you were if you didn't move at all. And I think sometimes if you can say that, then people go, "Oh, yeah, even with tears streaming down my face, or even with some horror going on, I can still plug away a little bit at something." And then the next thing you know, something falls away and you gather steam and you get back to your full self. But I've found that I've counseled a couple students that they'll
mm,
be way behind and they're saying, "I'm having all kinds of trouble." I'm like, let's just work on doing the best you can do. Don't be perfect. It'll be okay. You will get through this. And that seems to have helped a couple of them. I can only guess because they don't always come back and say, wow, that was wonderful, but they finished the course and have gone on. I can't ask for anything more than knowing that. So to me, that's what's
absolutely.
important. So
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, indeed. Everyone should be the best that you can be. Nobody's perfect. Everyone has a lot on their plate, and supporting each other to get through those things are critical. So, Nancy, thank you for being on my podcast today. Is there any lasting advice or any lasting words you want to leave with our audience today? And then also tell people where they can find you or connect with you on social media. And I'll also post a link to Nancy too.
Okay, well, I am on LinkedIn, and I do think I have a Facebook page. I'm not terribly
Ah,
active on those, but I enjoy keeping up with other people. I just I guess I'd just like to conclude with how wonderful an opportunity it was to be able to speak my mind about learning and about my passion for helping people get past bad points, and thinking that that's really part of nursing is to help people be as healthy as they can be mentally, emotionally, as well as physically. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nancy. I loved having you.